when Bruce and I first heard that they were going to honor Nebraska Warehouse, Cannonball, and Tamara, we thought, oh, that's nice. So we did what was natural. We both went to the World Herald and to the Jewish Press, looked in the obituaries, confirmed what we thought. And I went to Alex and Jay, I said, what the hell? Bruce and John are still alive. We're not dead yet. But I think it's lovely that we're doing this for Tamara. And so we're going to have a little chat. I'm going to be asking some questions. Tamara knows mostly what the questions are. There may be a few curveballs in there or whatever. I don't know the answers, so I'm actually looking forward to this too. Being Jewish business leaders, I decided to follow that format other than it's going to be business Jewish leaders instead of Jewish business leaders, because we're going to start with business first. So welcome, Tamara.
Thanks, Dad.
So tell us about all the different multiple companies that you run today, how they interrelate to one another, what they do, how they're all doing in the warehouse, the trucking, the brokerage, so on.
Good morning. Like Alex and Dad said, what we operate are a group of logistics companies. So logistics can kind of be a little bit of a buzzword. Right now, if you hear logistics, you might think UPS, you might think Amazon. That is not what we do, but it is similar to what we do. So oftentimes when logistics goes wrong, we feel it. And that's when most people understand that logistics plays a huge role in almost everything that we use, consume, and do. And so oftentimes logistics goes really well and is seamless. So I'll start with oldest company to newest companies. So Nebraska Warehouse, depending on who you ask, started in 1957 or 1959. I think Bruce and Dad both give different answers. But it started as a third-party public warehouse. So what that means is Nebraska Warehouse does not own any of the product that we store. So we are storing product for companies that own their inventory, but would like to hold on to their cash for other things and don't necessarily want to own the real estate or manage the labor for what is needed to move those products around. So everything that sits in our warehouse is owned by other people. At any given time, we could have up to 100 different customers storing product in our warehouses. Think of it as like an outsourced inventory management. Our customers manage their inventory, but we are doing that for them as an expert in that field. The next company that came to be was Cannonball Express. It was born to help move products for the customers that we were storing product for. So it did start as a dry transportation company in the 70s, and then in the 90s, Cannonball became what it is today. So primarily, Cannonball is a refrigerated LTL transportation company. That's a lot of words that most people might not know. LTL means less than load. So think of it this way. If Walmart wants to order hot dogs, right? They don't want an entire trailer full of hot dogs. They want 1 or 2 pallets for that location. And so what we do is take all the orders from customers who are selling to receivers. Most of what we do goes to grocery, food service, and restaurants. And so we will put like regions and similar temped products together on a trailer, and then our drivers will go out and make multiple stops. So for our trailers, our drivers could have anywhere from 2 to 10, sometimes more, stops on a trailer to make deliveries for the week. So it's a lot of things that those drivers are managing. Not only are they having to make sure that the integrity of the product stays intact, managing that temperature, but they're also managing a pretty intricate schedule of deliveries to make sure that they're getting where they need to be. We are based in Omaha. Our hub is here. We do not have other hubs around the country. So all of our drivers deliver to the entire lower 48. They start their week in Omaha on Friday. They go out, they make deliveries Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they get a backhaul so they don't have empty or deadhead miles and come back to Omaha. So again, When that goes well, that's great. When it doesn't, it causes some challenges within the supply chain, and that's when people start to feel that. The next company that was born in 2014 is the Junction. So the Junction is a freight brokerage. Cannonball was actually brokering freight as well, but in 2014, we made the decision to spin that business out of the trucking company. Think of freight brokerage as a matchmaker for companies that have freight to move and transportation companies that have assets in those areas.
Like Tinder?
Yeah, maybe not like Tinder. But sure, you can think of it that way. Yeah, no. Hey, there's a tech idea we can come up with.
Sorry.
This is what he does. He likes to throw me off. So it's a matchmaker. If somebody has product to move, but they don't have a relationship with a trucking company or a transportation company, the Junction steps in because we do. We make those relationships with all sorts of carriers all across the country. And the unique thing with the Junction is that product doesn't necessarily need to be in Omaha. So the Junction can talk to a customer who has freight in Oregon that needs to go to Texas, and we will find a carrier or a driver that will go from Oregon to Texas, and that freight never touches Omaha. So that's what the Junction does. Not fitting in with the timeline, but the other things that our group of businesses do, like Alex said, we are part of an industrial real estate, several company conglomerate. So depending on the family member or the entity or the building, we have several real estate companies. So we do love to do industrial real estate development, whether that's building buildings for Nebraska Warehouse and Cannonball to operate out of, or we're building buildings for other companies to operate out of. That is also something we do, which then spurred the need in 2022 to create our own property management company. So I also had a industrial real estate property management company for our portfolio of businesses. Yeah.
How did you get started in this business?
Yeah, so like Alex said, I went to school to be an elementary special ed teacher. Yes, he knows the answer to this question. I went to school to be an elementary special ed teacher. I taught for a year in the OPS and Boys Town school districts and got a call towards the end of that first year. And Dad said, hey, we're getting a lot of offers from people to buy our businesses. And if you ever thought of doing this, it's now or never. Because if you say no, we're going to start looking into selling and go that route. And he said, you can always go back to teaching, and that was 20 years ago. So I never went back to teaching. That's how I got started.
So how did the business actually get started?
I feel like you are better to answer that question.
Okay, so that was a plant question. So, Nebraska, my dad was a bag salesman, a burlap bag salesman here in Omaha. Bruce's dad was down in Florida and doing what, Bruce, sorry?
Real estate.
Real estate, okay, so.
Residential.
Residential real estate down in Florida. My dad worked for his uncle, and the building was down in the old Joggers Canyon at 80212 Leavenworth, and it was a 6-story old warehouse with rickety floors, and every picture you've ever seen on any spy or cop movie or show that shows a dirty, dusty warehouse with stuff all over, that's what it was. That is not what warehouses look like today, I promise you that.
Definitely not mine.
Especially not cameras, right? Anyway, bag business was starting to wane, and they didn't know what to do, so they started storing cans for Butternut Coffee, which was right across the parking lot down there where the Burlington station is and all that. Little by little, that got to be more of what they did out of the building, and Continental Can came calling to my dad and said, we want you to build a warehouse way out west. We're going to put a building out in the outskirts of town at 72nd and F. And so Dad, they purchased some ground at 90th and F Street, and that's where our original modern, if you will. Warehouse stood at that time then, they were operating 2 facilities. My dad called his brother Bernie down in Florida, said, hey, you need to come over here and help me run this is getting bigger and whatever. And that's kind of how it got started. Little by little it grew, every year they added on and added on. Interestingly, the same story happened with us. Dave and Bernie had offers to buy the building and offered to Bruce, who was older than I am at the time, I was still in high school or college, and offered him the same kind of offer that we did to Tamara. You're gonna see a theme here that our history just kind of keeps repeating itself. I think we have a good formula, so we repeat it. So anyway, they asked Bruce out of college if he was an accountant with Touche Ross or whoever the Deloitte Touche people are or were or whatever way back when. And Bruce said sure, so he came in, and then in 1980, I was a senior down at Kansas, and my dad had a heart attack on the tennis court. That was at a time when heart attacks were 2 and 3 weeks, not 2 and 3 days in the hospital. Things are different. There was always a buy-sell put in place, and then they offered to me the options like, don't know what's gonna happen with Dave, he's gonna, be healthy or not, and if he isn't or doesn't survive, the company will go to the Bernie Meyers family. So they asked me if I wanted in, and at the time I said sure. They said you could always go back to pharmacy. I said sure, and that was, I don't know, 50 years ago or whatever it was. So that's how the warehouse business got started. That's how Bruce and I got into it, and then we had a transition plan with our dads, and it was wonderful. I'm always happy to talk to anybody about what do you need for transition, and it's kind of like how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is 1, but the light bulb really has to want to change. It's the same thing with a transition. The older generation really has to want to make it work. They want to be mindful of everything they do, and they can't hang on, they can't keep holding on. I mean, they can, it works. I've seen many companies in our community that some of the patriarchs and matriarchs of those families stay around even when the kids are 65. That was not our MO. Our MO was to move the generations along, and that's where we are now. So that's how we got started, right?
That's right.
Let's see, what was the best idea or business segment that led to growth?
So this is actually a you quote, something that you said very early on in my career with our companies was how you describe to people what we do. And you say, we are a real estate company with a warehousing problem. And that's truly what we are, right? We go and develop real estate, and like I said in the earlier answer, if it's a space that Nebraska Warehouse can go into and use, find a customer that can fill that space, we will do that. And so being a real estate developer has really helped with our growth in what we call our operating companies.
Got it. All right, we're gonna not exactly shift gears, but the companies have done this twice now. Generational shift, transition, whatever. Tell us about navigating the generational transition and our. I've told you about ours.
Yeah.
You probably know more about your transition.
Maybe, or we both do. So yeah, the companies have gone through 2 generational transitions and then recently a 3rd transition, which is similar to a generation change. And so navigating that, anybody in here who has been part of a business who has either transitioned from one generation to another in a family business, or even transitioned from ownership and leadership knows it can be tricky, it can be challenging. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said the exiting generation has to be on board, at least in our family. That's what really helped spur our succession plan on. We set a 10-year goal when I started. Once we knew that it seemed like it would be something that I would be staying at and not going back to teaching, we set a 10-year plan, and we did all the things that we could to hit that 10 years. I worked every single job in the company except getting a CDL and driving a truck, and I haven't driven a forklift, although my team is really pushing to teach me how to do that.
I had a CDL.
I know.
I trained our drivers.
And you drove
was a
forklifts.
time.
Right. He's not a great teacher, so I can only imagine how, driving teacher, I should say. He wants to teach my 14-year-old right now. That's, I think, the biggest piece that needs to be there, right? The desire, I say it to my team, Gentry will know this, the want to do the dishes. You want to be part of that change. You want to help that transition be successful, because if that's not there, it's a little bit of a recipe for disaster, and it won't go the way that everyone's hoping for. So that's, I guess, a little bit about generational transition.
Talk a little bit about the family part of the family business.
Sure.
What makes it difficult? How do you manage family conflict? Not
Sure.
that we ever have it.
Never. So first of all, I'm not an expert. Yes, I've been in a family business for 20 years, but I'm hardly even an expert on my own family business. So I think the biggest thing to remember is all families are different. And the way that our family might work through either conflict or success is going to be different than other families, right? So I can tell you for us, there are really tough days and there are incredibly rewarding days. And for me, I have set my goal to live in between, right? And do the things that I know are going to help move us to our end goal, really. But there's no doubt that, yes, family in business presents its own set of challenges. And again, just being really willing to work through those things when they come up is what's necessary.
Off script.
Mm-hmm.
What do your employees feel about it being a family business?
What I hear from my employees about our companies being family-run business is positive. They enjoy it. I guess it touches a little bit on culture, but that people are a big thing for me. I think Alex said it in the intro. Yes, I move freight and I provide a service for my customers, but the biggest thing for me is my people and my team and who they are and how they show up and how I show up for them. And so everybody says you should never say you treat your employees like family. I don't care. I say that. I treat my employees like family. They all...
Timeouts and everything?
No, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. But I do. I treat my team like they are my family. And they can all tell you. I think they all feel it and know that. So.
Got it, thanks. All right, we're going to shift over to the Jewish part of Jewish Business Leaders. So tell everybody a little bit about your Jewish identity and how it came to be, your involvement in the Federation, synagogue, and so on.
Sure. So obviously I have parents that were really great role models for me. I grew up here. I think this was maybe actually the daycare or the dance studio was the daycare. And so I grew up here. This was where I went to preschool. So that kind of started my Jewish identity out very early. I've been a member of Temple Israel since I was born. So my involvement there as I got married and had children changed, which has been fantastic for Temple. I sit on the Youth Learning Program Steering Committee, which is kind of like PTO for Sunday school. I sit on their budget committee. I'm currently a member of the Board of Trustees and the Executive Committee at Temple. So I feel like it's really important for me to give back to the Jewish side of my life, and so I do spend a lot of time in different groups with Temple Israel. You actually got me involved with the Building and Grounds Committee here for the J and the Federation, so I've been doing that for several years and have really enjoyed being able to be part of that. I sat on the 132nd Street Task Force here. So I do feel like it's important for me, even though what my companies do aren't Jewish things, I think that it's important for me to bring those values into my companies.
How do you and your husband navigate the philanthropy and the religious side of life, being your husband's not Jewish?
Yes, we're an interfaith family. Philanthropy to us is philanthropy. It's important to us to give back to the community we live in. I, again, had a really great role models in you and Mom and Dee, why philanthropy is important. And so for me and my husband and our children, finding ways for us to give back to our community is huge. After the 2022 transition, I was working really hard on the internal company culture and making sure that the employees did feel like they were family and wanted and doing what we needed to do and happy with how they were providing their functions for our customers. And so we created a group that now does at least quarterly service projects. So we've done things for the food bank, we've done things for Humane Society, Nebraska Diaper Bank, Open Door Mission. So we're constantly looking for different ways to give back to the community. Again, we all live here, we all grow here, and it's important for us to make sure that our community can thrive, not just for us, but for everybody else who's in it.
Great. You did learn from somebody really good. Your mom. We're going to switch over to leadership now. This has obviously been something really important to our companies, to Bruce and I, our dads. Our dads had a completely different style of leadership. It went from a mom and pop, or pop and pop, if you will. And then as Bruce and I took over, it became a little bit more entrepreneurial, and I would suggest that Tamara's generation, with all the things that are going on, are even a little bit more corporate now. Not that it's corporate feeling, but it's certainly a far away. I mean, it was nothing for Bruce and I to run downstairs and jump on a forklift and help out, right?
I spent the last week entering orders for our largest customer.
Fair enough. So, let's start with the obvious. You're young, you're female. Even at 42, you're still you're still young. Mm-hmm. How has that affected you? How have you navigated it? What's it been like growing up and working in our industry, a man's world?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, no doubt. Being 23, coming into an industry that was predominantly male. 20 years ago, there were females in the business, but not many, and definitely not many in leadership. Now, when you look at the makeup of our industry, that's changing. And there's a lot of things that I'm proud to be part of that's helping that change. But yeah, at 23 and a female, it was tough. I had people that were directly reporting to me that had worked for you for 20 or 30 years that didn't want a young girl telling them what to do, and they don't know trucking and they don't know warehousing, and so yeah, that's a bit of an uphill battle. Even with us in leadership and with you and Bruce, I think you guys struggled a little bit in my having children years, worried that every time I thought 1 week off was plenty. You thought I was never coming back. More than 4, I saw you coming back. Yeah. But those are, talk about family business, right? That's not something you can say in corporate America, and that's something that your dad will say to you. When you walk in and say, hey, I'm pregnant and this is when I'm due. It's like, why did you do that to me? And I took 12 weeks off every time. But it is, that kind of shows you, right, how it can be. And so really for me, the biggest thing that I do, no matter what it is that I'm coming into, whether it's the business at 23 or I think you might ask about the captive, but our captive insurance company, 13 years ago, what I do is over prepare and make sure that I educate myself the best I can, so that when I am walking in there, I can earn, that respect from folks.
Elaborate on the captives. So,
Sure.
John Leonard's not here, but the Leonard family is over there.
Yep.
They were instrumental in getting it started.
Yes,
so
he was.
Elaborate just a little bit on that.
Sure. So our companies are part of an insurance captive. Our lines that are in the captive are work comp, our auto liability, our auto physical damage, and our GL, general liability. And so we are in a homogenous captive, which means I am with a group of 68 other member companies that do the same thing I do. They are warehouse and trucking companies from all over the country, and we pool our risk, essentially. And so, not essentially, that is what we do. We pool our risk. And the captive is celebrating its 30th year this year, and 2 weeks ago, I think, I just completed my 2-year run as the chairwoman of the captive, and I am its first female chair, which to me was a tremendous honor. Again, walking into a room full of men who see a young female who they had all had pretty established relationships for the prior 16 years, a little bit of fake it till you make it, feeling like I deserved that seat at that table. And again, earning the respect of everybody, showing them that I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about, just like they all do. And being able to run the captive for 2 years was an incredible honor.
She was also the youngest, not just
Yeah.
the first thing.
I was.
She's very modest. All right, so what are some of your philosophies on the myriad of leadership styles, qualities, whatever? Why do you choose to lead with this style in which you do?
I had the opportunity to speak to a leadership class at Bennington High School last year, and I think that might have been the first time that I actually sat down and thought about my leadership style. Obviously, being part of Vistage for a lot of years, we talk about those things, but I don't think I ever actually put words to how I lead or why I lead the way I do. So that was a fun experience for me to be able to actually put words to it. So what I learned from that experience with the juniors and seniors in that class was I very much follow the style of being a servant leader. Like I said, I had somebody out and I was entering orders and helping the team. I will jump in anywhere I can. I've been known to hang around and work an overnight every once in a while so I can see all the folks that work those shifts. Or the drivers that come in on Fridays that I don't get to see during the week. Again, I will never ask somebody on my team to do something that I myself am not willing to do or to help with. I think my team sees it. I think they feel that. I think they know that. And so for me, again, like I said earlier, yes, I'm performing a service for customers, but really what I'm doing is working with a team of amazing individuals and trying to really learn how each person shows up and where they want to be met, and then I meet them there.
How about tough leadership decisions that have to be made, whether they be terminations or going through with firing a customer or anything that is maybe a C shift for the company? What's your leadership style for those kinds of issues?
Yeah, that falls into what I've learned, or what I call change management. The J curve of change is what we call it in our company. That's something I learned from Vistage. And so
J for John?
No,
Oh.
but it could be. You are a change agent, so maybe. So teaching the team about what a J curve is, right? If you think about a J, it goes down before it goes up. And so, people kind of spiral into the OS factor of change, and what does this mean for me, and how is this going to affect me, right? Not necessarily the team or a customer, but understanding that that's how somebody's going to show up initially, and then teaching, coaching, and working through that. There's no doubt that being in leadership means you are going to run into times where you have to have really hard conversations. I think, what is the end goal? Where do we all want to end up, and what makes the most sense for all of us? I have had to fire customers before, and I still talk with them, having that be the outcome of that kind of a tough conversation to me, I feel like is success. Knowing that, hey, I think I'm really great at what I do and what my team does, but I might not be the right fit for you, and you might be better served at a different spot, and I want to see that be successful for you, so let me help you get to that.
Today, in today's world, how do you create successful culture? And how do you define culture?
Sure.
Or so how do you define successful culture?
I think you should always be working on your culture and making your culture successful for the company that you're running. The culture that my company has might not work for every other business sitting in this room, right? I know that. A lot of truck drivers and forklift drivers, might have a different culture than somebody sitting in a corporate office. And knowing how I can help support my folks, I think is what drives that culture really. Again, it's all about my people and what I can do for them to give them the opportunity to be successful in all of the different positions that they're in. Somebody who works in the office is going to need something slightly different than somebody who's in a truck all day. And knowing that the person who's driving a truck all day is solitary. And so when that person calls and wants 15 minutes of your time to just talk about the traffic or talk about the weather or, what that guy did at that last delivery point, right? I might have 20 other things to do, but it's important to take that call because that shows them that, all of us that are here that are not out there doing what they're doing all of the service for the company, because if they weren't doing what they're doing, we don't exist. I think it's very important to show them that. And so that's kind of how I've built culture, is really jumping in. Again, the second transition I think was a little bit more challenging. And so making sure that my team knew that I wasn't just gonna, walk in at 8 and leave at 4. Yes, there are days I do that, but they also know that, at 11:30 on a Friday night, I'll be there too. Or a 6 a.m. on a Saturday, I'll take that call. So I think that's how I started building it. I don't really know that there's a recipe on how can I go into another company and build that culture and have that culture be successful. I think it might be similar to generational transition, where your leadership has to want to see the culture be the way you are verbalizing what your culture is. We're actually in a process right now where we're what's the word? Not reimagining. We are.
Come on, you guys.
We just created not new core values. Our core values are what they are, but we're refreshing them and kind of bringing them into today. And that's been a fun process. And a lot of the feedback we got when we put them forward was, well, gosh, we're already doing that. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. That's what you want. And so to me, I guess that would be a successful culture.
Do you involve everybody in these decisions, in these cultures, or is this a culture and a vision that you have that you want to make sure it goes that way?
It's both. An overarching culture. This is a company that I want to be, in charge of, or that I feel proud to be in charge of, and then bringing in our management to offer feedback on what I came up with. And again, I think even in the management conversations, it was the same thing as what we got with our frontline employees. Like, yeah, Tamara, we're already doing that, so great. Now we just have a new picture for, those core values, and we'll keep going. So that's what I think, it makes it successful.
Got it. All right, we're getting close to Q&A time, even though this has all been Q&A. One of our concerns was I'm asking all these questions, and then we're going to open it up for questions, and nobody's going to have any questions. But we would like to open it up for questions, and Alex, you're going to start, and then I'll hand you this, and you guys.
I can just talk.
Oh, you no.
Yeah, so everybody in the back can hear.
Yeah, we've been in the back.
You can't hear back there. He can't hear. I don't think he's got his ears in today.
I forgot. So how is AI changing your industry? And then part two is, can you talk a little bit about how you guys compete, with national competitors, and what that landscape looks like, now and years from now?
Sure. We skipped that question. We did have a question that would have hit on some of that. So AI, how has that affected our businesses? Obviously, that's another buzzword in today's world. So the way that AI has changed or begun to morph our industry has a lot to do with things like predictive analytics, more of the GPS tracking or scheduling. We are, I don't want to say a slow adopter, but we are a cautious adopter to a lot of the tools that are out there, especially for warehousing and transportation. So there's certain things that I can't drag my feet on, right? E-logs or ELDs for drivers, right? They're no longer on paper logs. All drivers have to be on an electronic device. It makes it easier for regulation and law enforcement. So those are things I have to implement, right? Predictive analytics has been something that we actually did jump on pretty easy. So we have cameras, forward-facing, outward-facing cameras in our company vehicles, and they watch for coachable behavior, right? So that's where we're using that AI function to watch those behaviors and then give the managers the opportunity to coach through something a driver does they shouldn't be doing behind the wheel, or hey, this was an okay decision, but here's a better decision to make. Or this was a really terrible decision, and we got to talk about that, right? So that's what I think for AI, that's really where we've jumped in. We're working on bringing in a new software to help with appointment scheduling and order entry and that kind of easy AI adoption. But for the most part, that's really where we've stuck. And then to answer your second question about how do we play on a national stage, I am a small operator in the grand scheme of logistics. We've got about 60 trucks that go all across the country. I guess if Junction, you add in more, but for my assets, it's about 60. And then, we're under 1 million square feet for warehouse public 3PL space. And so we're pretty small when you look at what public warehousing and transportation looks like. But we are pretty niche in what we do. And so that refrigerated LTL piece definitely makes us stand out in what we do. There's not very many people that play in that market. So that's been great for us to really become experts in our field. And then our warehouses, I don't think I said this in the beginning, but we're food grade. So we store a lot of food ingredient, finished food, packaging for human and animal consumption. We have a ton of pet food right now. And so that's also a little bit different because like Dad said, when you think about the dark, dingy, dusty warehouses, those still exist. That's not me.
Tamara, how many people do you employ?
I use the number 80 on payroll. And then I have, what's my owner-operator count up to? Like 40 owner-operators, which are 1099, so they're not on payroll. But we've got about 80 people on payroll.
How about retaining drivers? How do you, right now?
That's a fun one right now. So he asked about retaining drivers. That's something we're seeing a shift in the industry, right? There's a lot of folks that don't want to do that job really anymore. And so I think that's where my culture comes into play, right? If I'm treating people in a way that makes them want to stay and continue to do the job and be successful for me, they're successful for them, and they hang around. So our tenure has been pretty good. I just saw it on our slides. Our average tenure for drivers, I want to say, is at 5 years right now. That dipped because we had a couple that were in the 20 and 28 year range that just retired.
How do you entice younger members of your family to become interested in the business?
That's going to be my last question.
So right now, Younger members of my family would be my 14-year-old, my 12-year-old, and my 10-year-old. And my 10-year-old says she wants to drive a forklifter, and that's about it, a forklifter. And that's about as close as we've gotten to enticing them to be part of the business. I think she told someone recently when they asked, what does your mom do? She said, she's a really good businesswoman. I don't know that they really know. I mean, they come with me, they see what we do. My 14-year-old has started asking a few more questions, but we'll see, right? If it is something they're interested in, my suggestion to them or my requirement of them will be that they do not come directly into the family business. I think I probably could have used another couple of years before coming into the business, knowing we had a succession plan that we were working towards. Changed that a little bit for me, but I think that's really important, right? If you're going to make a career out of being part of a family business, I think seeing how things work outside of the family and the business are really important.
A few years ago, I was in a conversation with some people from Werner who were talking about autonomous truck driving. Is that something that's coming up the road from an industry standpoint? And what does that mean?
There are places that are testing that right now. I think out in California, I've seen there's a few areas where they're actually using them. What I tell people about specifically the autonomous tractor trailer situation, there is so much infrastructure that will need to go into our country that I don't know if everyone understands how much that will cost to be able to get us there. Do I think we'll get there? Maybe at some point, some portion of the industry will do that, but it will be very specific, I believe. But to the question about how do you recruit drivers, right? If we get to a point where we don't have people that want to come into the industry and drive a truck, that's going to cause a major issue for us because, my notes, I'm Ron Burgundy, and I didn't read those notes, sorry. But I had a point to make, tens of thousands of the items that we are interacting with daily came off of a truck, right? And if we have people that don't want to drive trucks, that's going to cause a major shift in supply chain and how consumers, right now everybody expects your stuff's going to show up tomorrow, right? Your groceries are going to be on the shelf or on your porch, right? The day you ask for them. And it got there because a truck brought it to where the distribution point was. So autonomous trucks probably have a place in the industry, probably not as widespread as everybody's thinking about it right now. Maybe one day we become the Jetsons, but I think we have, again, it's going to be a lot of infrastructure dollars that have to be put in place on our highways and interstates to be able to allow an autonomous truck to operate safely. I'm not worried about the autonomous truck. I'm worried about all the people that are driving cars around the autonomous truck.
You talked a little bit about the family dynamic, but I'm curious if you and John, or you and Bruce, or any dynamic internally have clashed to the point where it spills over and affects family life even for a day or a week or whatever outside.
You want to take it first?
Sure.
Okay.
It happened to me first.
It did.
Yeah, of course, it's always going to happen, right? It happened as we were growing up. One of the advantages that Bruce and I had as partners is that Bruce is 4 years older than me and lived in Florida for his very young years, and I think moved here, you were in grade school or something like that. But our dads intentionally didn't really socialize a lot, and Bruce and I never went to the same school, so we didn't have the baggage that families come with in a family business. But we had really young, cocky, pain in the ass John, who started at the age of 22, who thought he knew everything. And so I tell this story all the time. I'm not afraid to tell it. So there was a day, and by the way, this is just not a day that this happened, but there was a specific day where I had kind of a knockdown drag out with my dad, and I had kind of a knockdown drag out with Bernie, and I had kind of a knockdown drag out with Bruce, all on the same day, all about different things. And to this day, as if you know me, I believe still that I was right in each one of those arguments. But I will tell you the common denominator was it was me getting in fights with everybody. So they, number one, put me in an off-site building for a while to manage.
Time out. That's time out. You got
That was
yeah,
my
yeah.
time out. And honestly, they said, look, this isn't gonna work, you need to get help. And I did, and I sought help, and I sought counseling and whatever. I've told everybody this, by the time Tamara came into the business in like '07 and James in like 9 or 10 or whatever,
yeah.
we were starting a transition to do this, and Bruce and I retired in, I don't know, 10 years ago, 16 or 17 or something like that. But during that last phase of my time in the industry and in our career, for whatever reason, I said, Bruce and I had used consultants before, but somebody called me about a thing called Vistage. I don't know how many of you people understand or know that, and I'll let Tamara talk a little bit about that. But Vistage taught me a whole lot about people, about myself, about leadership, about all kinds of really cool stuff. And I felt like, boy, I wish I had that 20 years ago. So when James and Tamara came in that transition period, Bruce and I made the decision to require them to go through Vistage. And you learn how to handle the clashes, to be honest with you. They're gonna happen. You're not going to avoid them, and I think that's one thing that maybe you don't realize coming in. It's like, oh, we're gonna make this work, but it never works, whether they're family or not, right? There's always interpersonal crap. So Vistage really helped, and I'll let Tamara tell you what she thinks.
Yeah. I mean, the other answer to your question for me is, yeah, it bleeds over, it happens. You know, we had a transition, I've alluded to the 2022 transition a few times. When Gen 2 sold to Gen 3, it was me and my brother, and 16 or 17. And in 22, we realized that dynamic doesn't work. And so we were able to have my brother really focus on our real estate side of things. He went and ran our property management company, dealt with our tenants, bankers, he went and really managed that. And I stayed with our, what we call the operating company, so trucking, warehousing, brokerage. And that's what worked for us. Again, all families are gonna be different, but yeah, I mean, crap happens, bad days happen. But like I said earlier, I think the biggest thing is really understanding what the end goal is, keeping that in mind, and then try to live in between the really bad and the really good.
I've got a question. You mentioned James. Is he still involved in the business? And also, do you have any cousins that want to get into the business?
Great question. My brother actually just moved to Georgia 3 weeks ago. So no, he and his family are living down in the Atlanta area now. And we have a new property manager who's handling our stuff here. And as for cousins, Bruce has children, and neither of his children are really interested in being part of the businesses.
And we have time for one more question.
Thanks. I'm curious how concerned you are about nuclear verdicts for your captive and whether the Montgomery case at C.H. Robinson has implications for your brokerage.
Yeah, so I spent 3 days at a conference talking about Montgomery. What do you do? How do you know this? What's that?
I run a hedge fund.
Oh, okay. So the Supreme Court case he's talking about, the Montgomery case, was a really big kick in the shorts to freight brokerages, really. Basically what it was saying is a freight broker can be held liable for something that a carrier does. And again, if you remember when I was explaining what a freight broker does, that's that Tinder matchmaker. And so the freight broker isn't managing the carrier. They are connecting the carrier with the person who has the freight. And so that's a huge worry for all of us. We've now been referring to the Montgomery case is what we call a thermonuclear verdict. The Werner case is what we would call a nuclear verdict. And so we are always watching that. We are part of several associations who, I spent time up in Washington in May talking to lawmakers about why that stuff affects the people that are working in their districts. and how it affects us. And so yes, we are always watching that. We have people that help us keep their eye and ear on those things. We saw almost immediately changes, especially with our transportation company and our freight brokerage company, in how people were interacting with us, things that they were requiring us to have, whether it be different insurance, different contracts, all sorts of things. That is an ever-evolving world right now. I don't think the dust has settled from, I know the dust has not settled from that. So we will continue to see additional changes, I think specifically for freight brokers as it relates to Montgomery. And we'll see, how many of us can hold on, right? I think it will drive some out of business. I don't necessarily believe that's a bad thing. Some probably should go if they can't handle the regulation that's being put in place. We took steps to change some of the tools we use to make sure that we are being extra diligent and compliant in what we need as it's written right now. That's a great question. Thanks.
Thank you both. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tamara.